Hi, so my name is Hannah and today on Minerva I'm going to be doing a pillowcase tutorial. I've selected some beautiful rose and Hubble cotton poplin fabric to make this pillowcase, and I thought we could personalise our pillowcases using some beautiful embroidery floss that we have on Minerva. All products will be tagged below, and if you happen to make a pillowcase as well, please do tag. I cannot wait to see what everybody else makes. Thank you. Here I've got an old pillowcase that I'm going to utilise as my base pattern for today's tutorial, but don't worry if you don't have an old pillowcase that you can use. It'll be really simple because we'll just be making two rectangles with a strip that we're just going to sew together and personalise. Here I have all the embroidery accessories that I've used for today's pillowcase tutorial. I think it's great to have a wide variety of embroidery floss in your stash. You never know when you're going to need it for various projects. How pretty are those DMC embroidery scissors? I'd probably wear those on a necklace. That embroidery DMC transfer embroidery pen is so handy, really great to use. Not forgetting a trusty embroidery hoop, and last but not least, some lovely embroidery needles by DMC. Really great accessories that make your project so much easier. So here I've got my old pillowcase that's going to bring a nice new lease of life to this beautiful rose and Hubble cotton poplin. I've doubled this over, so we're going to end up with two rectangles which will make our pillowcase. I'm going to cut around this, allowing for some seam allowance and of course the overlap which keeps the pillow inside your pillowcase. So let's get cutting out, shall we? It's always a little bit scary when you do that first cut into beautiful fresh fabric, isn't it? But it needs to be done. There we go, so we can keep that for our overlap. Then I'm going to cut along here so we end up with two pieces. Perfect. Then I'm just going to neaten up the bottom here. So we've got two nice straight lines. Perfect. Then I'm just going to turn that round so I can do the other side. Making sure that's pulled out so we've got the right amount of seam allowance. Perfect. Right, let's turn that back round. Be gone, old pillowcase, we don't need you anymore. So you should end up with two nice rectangles that are going to make up our pillowcase, and here as well I've got the overlap that will keep the pillow secure in the case. So let's get sewing. Okay, now for the exciting part. We're going to sew together our two rectangles using a straight stitch. I've got it set to 1.5, but whatever's your preference, and then I'm going to finish off those seams with a zigzag, or if you've got an overlocker, use an overlocker. so now I'm going to switch to our zigzag stitch to finish off those seams. Okay, I was gonna save these beautiful embroidery scissors until I got to the embroidery part, but I just, have you seen how pretty they are? Oh my gosh. So I'm just gonna use them to cut my thread. Oh, beautiful. Okay, so I've straight stitched along 3 sides now, done 1 lot of zigzag stitch, so I'm just going to do the 2 other sides. Not to forget to leave our opening to put our pillow in, so just 1 more side to zigzag now. Again, if you have a serger or an overlocker, feel free to do a lot neater seam than I'm doing. All 3 sides are stitched and zigzagged now. So I think I'm going to go around and trim any excess off the seam allowance and make sure it looks nice and neat. Okay, so to finish off our unfinished opening here, I'm just going to neatly fold over, press that into place with an iron and stitch along so we've got a nice beautiful finish on the opening there. Okay, so now I am going to finish off that opening so we've got a nice clean line for the seam. Just using a simple straight stitch here. Get those pesky bits of thread out of the way. Okay, perfect. Our initial pillowcase is done. So the next step that I'm going to do now is I'm going to create that overlap with our scrap pieces of fabric that keeps the pillow inside the pillowcase. Easy peasy. Okay, so here we have our finished pillowcase, all nice and freshly done. So that's just 2 rectangles sewn together, 3 sides. I've done a straight stitch and a zigzag, but as I've said, if you have a serger, probably use that for a knee to finish. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the enclosure, the overlap, which keeps the pillow inside the pillowcase. So luckily I've got 2 pieces of the same length, so I can do 1 for each side. So all I'm going to do is cut off the excess here so that it's the same width as the pillow, and then I'm probably going to do nice tidy seams on both sides to finish that off really nice and neatly. There we go. Okay, so here I've got my nicely trimmed overlap that's going to form the enclosure for the pillowcase, and our lovely finished seam of the opening of the pillowcase. So again, we'll go back to the sewing machine, do some nice seams along here, neaten them up and attach these 2 flaps to the inside of our pillowcase. Okay, so here I've got my first piece of overlap that I'm going to finish off. I'm just going to fold over and do a nice straight stitch to create a nice clean seam. Okay, that's one side done. I would recommend ironing as you go along here, but I'm just being lazy. And again, repeat on each side. One more side. That's one of the overlaps finished. So let's just check that against our pillowcase and cut away these threads. So we can match that up against our pillowcase. Okay, here I'm just going to do our second overlap. Okay, so this is my first overlap done. So I've attached that just using a couple of pins, and that's facing the right side of the pillowcase. So once that's all sewn there, it's going to be a lovely, nice, neat finish. Okay, same principle of previously with this overlap. I've attached it facing the right side of the pillowcase, and we're just going to sew along there so we've got a nice neat finish once that's all stitched together. Lovely. Just going to take the pins out of that now, and I'm going to give it an iron. Okay, so now I've pressed and ironed my opening with the overlap attached both sides. Now all we need to do is wrong sides together is attach each overlap side. So both sides together, wrong side, so just stitch those so you've got one neat overlap to keep our pillow inside the pillowcase. Okay, so here I've got my two overlap pieces together, and I'm just going to sew those with a straight line and then probably finish them off with a zigzag. Okay, so here's our beautifully finished pillowcase, complete with nicely finished overlap. Obviously the view at the moment is wrong side out. So as I said previously, I finished this off with a zigzag and straight stitch, but if you have a serger, feel free to use a serger. I know a lot of people, with the next steps, we're going to do some embroidery. If you prefer to do the embroidery before you sew the pieces together, feel free to do it that way. But just how my sewing mind works, I prefer to have the project as a complete and then add on any designs and embroidery. So can't wait to do that next. Let's get to it. So here I've got my completed pillowcase, ironed and turned right side out. I've selected some pastel embroidery flosses and now I'm going to sketch out some design ideas. So here I've just done a classic initial style monogram for my pillowcase idea. I think there's so many different options that you could go with, flowers, your favourite animals. It just depends how much time you want to spend doing embroidery. But because embroidery is so relaxing, it's just something that you can do while you're watching TV. So here I've placed my embroidery hoop in one of the far hand corners at the opening of the pillowcase, just for ease, but please feel free to place your embroidery wherever you wish. I think I'm going to go for pink for probably one of the first initials, but let's see what I'm going to get up to. So here I've sketched out my initials using the water erasable pen available on Minerva. Really handy pen to use for crafts such as this. So here I'm grabbing one piece of the embroidery skein and then I'm going to separate it out into 3. So here I'm doing a simple back stitch. I feel the smaller you do your back stitch, the curvier you can make your monogramming. It's easier to control how the lines flow with a smaller stitch as opposed to a long back stitch. Something like this would make such a lovely gift. There's so many different fabrics on Minerva that you could use for a pillowcase. There's some beautiful cottons and toile de Jouy prints that would make a really striking bed linen. So I do feel bed linen these days has a lot of boring, lacklustre choices, and being able to make not only your own garments is really great, but being able to decorate your own home with things that you've made or decorate your loved ones' homes with special gifts is such a treat. Because there's so many times that I'll see something in a old film or old TV show and I'm like, why don't we sell that anymore? And that's what is great about doing crafts and sewing, is you can just create your own world with little projects like this. Something like this you could take to your sofa in the evening, making sure you've got a good light, but it's a really cathartic way to pass a nice lazy Sunday. Okay, another progress shot, making good progress on this now. I'm thinking I might add some floral design maybe around the initials here. Okay, you can see here I'm nearly at the end. Okay, so here I've got my finished initials. As you can see, I've added some extra swirls because I like to be fancy like that. I'm thinking the next detail I'm going to add is maybe a little piece of lavender at the side of the initials. So let's see what I can do. Okay, so I've drawn out my lavender and now I'm just doing the stems with a simple back stitch, and I will probably do a lazy daisy stitch for the actual lavender, and I couldn't help myself, I had to add a little bow to the little bunch at the end there. Okay, so here I am just doing more of a small back stitch to make the bow, and then I'll probably do a French dot for the knot in the middle of the bow. So here for my lavender, I've done the bow with a back stitch. I've done 3 little French knots here, and now for the lavender pieces, I'm just doing a simple lazy daisy, making sure not to angle it too taut. So you've got some nice little lavender buds. So I think my lavender is finished now. I could probably keep adding more lavender until night time, but I do tend to get carried away with things like this. So all I need to do now is just run this under some warm water to get rid of that ink. So I will let that dry and show you what it looks like after. Here's my final embroidery piece. I'm really happy with the results. I think it's really pretty. There's so many different options that you can go for embroidery, but I think this was a nice, simple, sweet design to go with. I'm definitely inspired to make some more pillowcases for friends and family in the future. Thank you so much for watching today's pillowcase tutorial on Minerva. I do hope you've enjoyed watching. I really loved making this pillowcase. It's such an easy project and gives really pretty results. If today's tutorial inspired you to make your own pillowcase, please do tag me in what you've created. I would love to see it. And if you haven't already, feel free to create a Minerva account. It is free to join and it's a great way to get inspired by fellow creatives on this lovely community. Thank you so much for watching and do take care.